Hey, this is Mr. Steele here, or Steele Davis. This is Tommy.
Tommy over here.
UmmaGawd online. Today we're actually going to talk about pinching versus thumbs. If you have no idea what we're talking about, you should probably change the channel right now. No, I'm just kidding. But in all reality, there's multiple ways to hold a radio. There's a lot of like traditional guys that will tell you that you use thumbs like this, and this is kind of like the gamer way. And then there's also pinching, where you pinch the sticks, and then there's a hybrid of the two, which is kind of what I did.
So historically, I mean, people have preferences depending on what type of RC model they're flying. So describe to me like the typical person that would use thumbs.
Typical person that would use thumbs, probably someone that comes from a gaming background. So typically when you're holding an Xbox radio or an Xbox controller, you're using your thumbs because you need your other fingers to hold like things. Sticks. I mean,
the R1 button.
I know some guys that play with what we call the claw, where they actually don't, like on an Xbox controller you have like the A, B, and C button, or A, B, X, or whatever's on the Xbox controller, but they have their thumb on the stick, and then they use their finger to roll on the buttons so that they can do specific tricks on certain games. So you have a hybrid of the two. Like you can either use a thumb, but typically your thumb is actually on the stick the whole time. So that's like where you would come from, like any other background, just in general of gaming or anything coming into a flying RC, you're going to use your thumb.
So then what about pinch? Like describe to me the type of person that would use pinch.
Pinch is something where you wouldn't immediately just grab onto pinching. And when I say pinching, that means you're physically pinching the stick instead of having your thumb on top of it. And you wouldn't, I mean, I wouldn't assume someone would come in and like be like, all right, I got to pinch, that feels more comfortable, because in the beginning it doesn't feel comfortable. The most comfortable thing for most people is to use your thumbs. Or why do you think you would want to pinch even though it's not natural or it doesn't look natural?
When I was first getting into RC modeling, I noticed that a lot of 3D heli pilots would pinch, but I never really understood why. So why would you do that?
Why would you pinch?
Yeah, well, especially for somebody with flying like a 3D heli versus say a DJI Phantom. You
don't write with your thumb, you don't type with your thumb. I mean, you hit the space bar, but that's kind of a caveman-esque way of doing things, is slapping that space bar with your thumb. But you don't have as much dexterity with your thumb as you do with your index finger or the rest of your fingers. So in theory, the pinching is something where you can actually have like a push-pull situation where you have your index finger and your thumb, so you have the added dexterity of your index finger in that equation. You have a little bit more dexterity and a little more control over minuscule movements within the stick position. And if you're pinching on one side, there's probably no reason for you to not pinch on the other side. So you want to be symmetrical when you're flying. So
most multi-rotor pilots I've noticed fly with the thumbs, and you're one of the very few that has something more of like a hybrid. So why don't you explain to us, for flying multi-rotors, why you chose to do that? And if I understand correctly, you started off with thumbs, right?
I started off with thumbs, yes. So when I got into flying RC, I started on collective pitch helicopters, and I started out with my thumbs, and I actually flew for a while, like some modest sport flying with my thumbs, and I noticed that it was very difficult to maintain altitude because of just how, especially when it was cold out, because I learned in like December or February in Georgia, which is like super wet and cold. So I went online, started researching some guys that were flying collective pitch helicopters, some of the best guys in the world, and they were all pinching, or 90% of them were, and I was concerned that I had learned the wrong way. So I initially tried pinching, and it felt really awkward because obviously pinching, when you think of the word pinch, you want to actually pinch the stick like this, which you don't have full range of motion, especially if you don't have a neck strap, and it just feels a little awkward. Where with thumbs, you can hold the radio, you can actually support the radio, and you can move full range. So that's why I think a lot of guys just automatically go to thumbs. So what I did is I wanted to pinch, but I also wanted to maintain some kind of thumb, so I could be, I don't know, attached to what I originally learned. So what I do is I actually hold the radio with my pinkies like this, and I have my hands all over the tops of the radio so I can support the radio, and then I place my thumb on top of the stick and then I put my index finger on the front. So in certain situations, I actually shift my thumb so that I am pinching, but in other situations, I use my index finger solely, and I only have my thumb on there in case I need to do a yaw or an elevator aileron maneuver. So at any point in time, I could have one finger on, or I could have both fingers on. It just depends on the situation. And it's pretty natural to go from thumbs to that style of pinch than to go to a literal pinch. And I know Tommy started out with thumbs and flew thumbs for a long time, so he had a long time to get a habit down packed. And then I explained to him my theory on why I pinched, and it made a little bit of sense to him, and he tried it. And I think he flies with it now.
It was like about a week and a half ago, because I was telling him, like, you know, I'm very interested in the way that you grip your sticks, because I've been flying with thumbs. We're gonna cut that part out. And I have smaller hands, and the issue that I had with it was that I couldn't get full range of motion without doing something awkward with my hand. So this is how I used to hold my radio, and as you can see, full stick up for me was still one notch above the top. I don't know if you can see that right there. And for me, to compensate for that, what I did was I adjusted the curve. Yep. But when you do that, you lose resolution. And when you're doing specific moves, especially with multi-rotors, or if you're doing crazy things like Mr. Steele, you want some really good resolution. So one of the things that I was interested about with using the pinch method was because I wanted to be able to blip the throttle a lot easier. Because with just a thumb, what I noticed is that if I do that really fast, I would put some rudder input or yaw input that I didn't want, and that would make the trick look kind of sloppy. And so I picked that up from Steele, and I said, well, you know what, if you got two fingers, now you've got one that does the downward motion, and you can use your thumb to go the upward motion, and you've got a lot more dexterity because you've got two fingers now doing the control input.
Yeah, you have a lot more fine motor control with two fingers than you do with one, especially a thumb. So the thumb is obviously not the best for fine movement.
I actually get really nervous at races, and it takes at least 2 or 3 batteries before my hands stop to shake. And I was telling him, like, how, you know, like, what can I do? And he said, why don't you just try the pinch method? And so that's what I started doing, and it actually helped me a lot. I still shake and I still get nervous, especially at a race. You'll see my thumbs doing this, but now when I've got 2 fingers on there, it kind of dampens all of that, and my footage doesn't look as shaky anymore until I can get all those jitters out.
Yep.
Now the interesting thing I want to point out too is we're calling this pinch, but really it's kind of more of a hybrid.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you told me that I kind of held on to was, like, you know what, erase everything that you got in your mind and close your eyes, grab the radio, and what feels normal. Because for you actually wrap the stick around kind of the crevice of your finger, right?
Yep.
So I started off that way, but again, I got some smaller hands and that just didn't feel right to me. So I just closed my eyes, I went like this, and I actually found myself doing this instead. So there's no real right or wrong way. Just do what feels natural. And this is what I ended up with. And I actually started this about a week and a half ago, and I actually picked it up really fast.
He actually won the freestyle at the IDRA event after learning pinch less than 7 days ago.
Yeah.
That tells you how natural it was for him. So it might be just as natural for you guys.
Yeah, and you know, it might not be for everybody, but for me, it worked out, and we wanted to share this with everybody just because thumbs is just, you know, if it works for you, it works out great. But this is also another way of trying it out. And for me, the transition wasn't bad at all.
I didn't even know this, but Trappy pinches. I mean, he does the exact same thing that we do. And then Schizo, which Jonathan Davis is a buddy of mine that I fly with all the time, he actually, like raptor claws. He kind of comes over the radio like this, and I don't even know. It literally looks so goofy. And he has very, very shaky hands, but he's one of the smoothest pilots I've ever seen under the camera, like actually FPV footage. So
and again, the whole point was just to be able to get some more dexterity and control over your stick input.
Yeah.
And you know what, for me, I immediately latched onto it, and I felt myself actually get better as a pilot. I felt a lot more confident about the things I was doing, enough to continue with it in the freestyle event.
Yep. I mean, if you have smaller hands, you have to shift your hand entirely to hit that switch. Where flying on like pinch like this, I mean, I could even roll over and use this pot if I wanted to. I can still get to the side pots. I mean, I could hit pretty much every switch and still have a control finger on the controlling stick. That was a little bit about pinching versus thumbs. Obviously, I don't think it's pinching versus thumbs per se, but it's actually just an insight to how
Yeah.
I fly, which is a pinch method, and then Tommy used to fly thumbs, and he converted over to this pinch style.
And there's nothing wrong with thumbs. I mean, Chad's an excellent pilot, and he flies with thumbs. We just wanted to share this with everybody because we just wanted to show you that there's other ways of holding the sticks that might be better for you.
There's not one way to hold a radio.
Right.
You could even fly with your face if you wanted to.
So that wraps up Rotor Riot. Thank you for watching. If you like this, hit like, subscribe. If you didn't like this, I'm sure you'll leave an awesome comment anyways. And if there's something that you want to hear or see us do another review of, or have any questions for us, bring it down in the comments and we'd be glad to do it on the next episode.
And if your comment's negative, we'll find you.